with the computer real quick. Welcome everybody. Hope everybody's surviving all this cold weather and your bees are surviving this cold snap we just had. Not fun. Welcome. So we want to thank Emily Hillstrom and our volunteers who covered Farm Field Days. I'll know who went to Farm Field Days at Harward Farms down in Springville. I was there today for half a day. It was loads of fun talking to second graders about bees. So we want to thank all those who came and everybody who helped, who got their supplies, their bee supplies from our group buy. There are some extra things that were left over from the group buy if you're interested. The prices are back there. Just see Jen right there and pay her for them. There's also a bee oil back there. That's $20 a bottle. So if you're interested,
so your computer's picking up.
I have another HDMI cable.
go ahead. Let's see. Oh, today, Mike, are you ready?
I thought Shelley was going first.
No, it says you're going first. Mike's going to be talking about covering and installing new bee packages. So we'll leave it all up to you. Whatever.
You good to go?
We might have to just do it without it.
I don't care.
I know you don't.
Spin this around. You can have all of this, but I want the table. How you doing, everybody?
Great.
Pretty good. Good. All right, so I've got some older equipment here and a little bit of new equipment. I'm going to start with the new equipment because some of this is what you will wind up having. I don't know who ordered what. I think this is what's coming in. Is this correct?
This is somebody from the group. I bought that, yes.
Okay, so this is solid bottom board. I run screen bottom boards for ventilation purposes. It's totally up to you what you run. I find this gives the hive a whole lot more ventilation, which can be a good thing and a bad thing depending upon the time of year. If you look at the back side of my screen bottom board, I have cutouts right here. I actually can close the bottom off. So beekeepers are beekeepers. They're going to have 100 different directions on which way they want to go. We kind of had a little conversation back there on what and what the processes are. The biggest thing is you want ventilation to get that honey dried out. You want to keep that hive dry during the winter. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do.
Do you close yours off in the wintertime or do you just leave it?
I actually leave it. Now come springtime, when she starts laying, I will close it down. And literally, this last weekend, I actually insulated my hives. Last weekend. Not throughout the winter. It was probably. Last weekend is when I insulated my hive. So my biggest reason for that is because that's where my brood is at. I know I have brood in there and I want to protect that. This is still wide open. So they're still getting plenty of air to dehydrate and not build moisture into the hive and thus winding up with a lot of dysentery and so on and so forth in the hive. So I'm not an expert really in that realm of keeping it a perfect, humidity level. The bees are going to do that, or at least you want to give them the opportunity to do that. So that's kind of off topic, but anyway. Top boards, ventilation at the top, that's going to be important so that you actually get that ventilation through the hive. As you can tell, this is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. You can see the lifting. So top boards are going to be what they are. This top board here, this is some pine, but it's also got a steel cover. I'll tell you, on this steel cover, it's going to get extremely hot. So understand that this inner cover is going to be important. Okay, insulation in the summertime with a steel cover like this. They used to do this for the guys in Vietnam. You remember that? You know, hot boxes. So don't do that to your bees if you can. Yes, I do have some steel like that on the top of my covers, but I also run inner covers. So insulate them.
Mike, would it be a good idea to paint that white then?
No,
No?
no, because it's going to heat up. That paint's just going to peel right off. So it's really not going to. It's a great idea, and like I said, I do have this. On my inside, I have insulation. Okay, but I do have these, and I'm running them. But I have some insulation on the bottom side, 1/2 inch. I think it's a 1/2 inch poly. But you also have to make sure that you have the distance here to actually put that poly in. Depending on how deep this area is here, you may not be able to put that poly in there. This is probably deep enough this direction that you can put some poly in here and help insulate that heat that's going to be transferred. But this is a great protectant. I'm not knocking it. Like I said, here's what's going to happen to your top cover. Be prepared. So I'm definitely not saying don't run a telescoping top like this. I'll do a migratory top like this with a telescoping top on top. That's actually how I run my hives. And an inner cover. So, you know, don't think that this is the only thing you have to use. Don't think this is the only thing you have to use. You can combine the two. This really actually does protect your migratory top. Questions? Feel free to speak up. Go ahead.
So if you had both the inner cover and the telescoping cover on, when it gets super hot, would you just take off the?
No.
Still run both?
So, hang on a second.
Sorry.
Let me go ahead and build this thing. So here's your brood box. Here's your next brood box. Okay. Here's your inner cover. And here's your migratory top. Okay. Bees have, and it's hot in here.
It is warm in here.
Thank you. Bees have access and ventilation on the top. If you're running a screen bottom board, obviously the bees will have ventilation in the bottom. If it's really hot in the summertime, you're going to stagger these boxes about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch here. That gives you ventilation here, that gives you ventilation here. You can stagger it this way. And we're only talking about 1/8 of an inch stagger, because you don't want the other bees coming in here and robbing. That adds to the ventilation. You have your ventilation up here. This mainly is protecting everything below it, weather-wise. heat, rain, wintertime snow. So this really, this telescoping top is what it's called, is more just protecting your equipment. You can eliminate this top and just run this top. If you do, that's fine. Make sure you have a ventilation hole here in your inner cover so that that air can escape from the hive. It comes in the bottom, heat rises, especially in the wintertime. That becomes a problem with moisture. Heat rises, it gets onto the bottom or onto the bottom. If it can't go anywhere, it's going to condensate on that surface, and then all of a sudden it's going to start dripping down onto the bees, frozen bees. So ventilation in the wintertime is immensely important. So that's one of the reasons why I can't remember who asked, do I run that, close that off in the wintertime? No, I don't. I leave it wide open.
So do you guys have all your hives ready to go? Like, some people are getting packages this weekend, I'm getting mine next weekend. So everybody's getting their bees pretty soon. Is everybody ready to go and have all of your hives set up, ready to go? Yeah? Yeah, okay. How do we get rid of that? Let's see.
Anybody got a question, go ahead and pop it out there while I'm...
We got a lot of oldies in here and a lot of experienced people, and we need you guys and your experience too. So when we're talking about getting packages or getting nukes, that's what a lot of us are getting in the next couple weeks. And there should be a sign-up sheet going around. Did you talk about it, Martin? Because I was distracted. Martin, did you talk about the mentor sign-up sheet going around?
Oh no, I didn't, I forgot.
So it's right here, and it's in front of you, Angie, if you'll start passing it around. So Caleb over here is doing west of the freeway, and Ron is not here tonight. He's doing east of the freeway. If you need help and you need an extra set of eyes, feel uncomfortable, want somebody to come in your, this is, what do you need? Oh.
I have these, I don't have any corks.
This one's got a candy in it.
Yeah, I got candy in this one too.
Okay.
I thought, oh, there's a cork.
Could we just
I
have
got a cork.
their phone number, so when we have questions, we could call them versus them calling us, and maybe we don't need to have questions? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Do you want to tell everybody your phone number, Caleb?
801-787-4137.
And
787, thank you.
And text is usually best during the day because I'm working and I can
Right.
respond to text easier.
Jim, will you pull up Ron's phone number and tell him Ron's? And you're always welcome to give me a call. Angie said she lived 2
Yeah.
weeks away from,
Yeah.
2 blocks away from
2
me.
weeks?
2 blocks.
Oh, good. What'd you do to your shoulder?
I had surgery.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna pass 2 different, well, actually, I'm gonna pass 3 different queen cages around. I don't like yours because it doesn't have a cord. I don't know who you're getting your bees from and how they're gonna be corked. So I've got the plastic style. I have 2 typical wooden styles. One has the candy cork in it, one has a regular cork in it. And I will actually pass this around as well as an example of what you're going to do if you have this style, which only has an actual wooden cork in it. You're going to take some marshmallow and stuff that in there. So if you pass those around, that'd be fantastic. Two different styles of boxes you're going to see would be your wooden and your plastic. They're set up essentially the exact same way. You got your sugar board or your sugar candy,
Sugar water.
sugar syrup in here. It normally has a
Piece of fabric.
fabric here that the bees can drink from. These are the exact same size. It's essentially the exact same thing. So we're going to get our bees. They're going to be in one of these two different scenarios. Queen cage on this one.
You just passed them all away.
What's that?
You just passed all your queen cages away.
I got plenty. Because I'm not a very good beekeeper. All right, I've been collecting these for a few years. Queen's going to be in your cage, cork, la da 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 da. She'll be installed. This metal thing holds the queen in place and she's going to be kind of like that, probably hanging straight down, fairly close to your sugar water. In these cages, it's the exact same thing. And they may actually just be installed right here. So, depending on where you get your bees and how they come and where they come from, expect to see slight deviations from what I'm showing you. But it's essentially the exact same thing. The queen's here, the bees can get to her, they can take care of her, la da 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 da.
But when you pick them up, it's gonna look like this.
Yeah.
A big glob of bees, and you will not be able to see your queen cage.
You're not going to be able to see it.
And you get there and they check off your name and they say, Italians, here you go. And you take that box and little bee feet are coming out and they are buzzing the crap. Zzz, and you put them in your car and you have some loose bees and they're in your car and you're driving home thinking, holy crap, I'm gonna get stung. I mean, my first time, I am like freaking all the way home thinking it's a suicide mission.
This is
Actually,
bad.
you
This
stopped to drop Josh's off.
I don't know, but, and then, so Mike's gonna walk you through it, but as you're getting in there, and we're gonna take you step by step of getting this out, because it's so intimidating, and even sometimes if just having another person, even if you're just doing it by yourself, having another person there with you just gives you some confidence. Now, Joshua was a bad kid. We got home, it was a stormy Saturday night, and we're trying to get there and get the package put in. We open the box up, pull the queen out, and guess what?
She's dead.
She's dead. We're on the other side of the lake. I called Lee Knight, and I'm like, my queen's dead. And he's like, get back here, we're getting ready to leave. And I'm like racing to drive back over on this side of the lake and get a queen. But yeah, so he's gonna tell you, but once you open it up, make sure your queen's alive.
Yeah. She brings up a good point of, I don't know what kind of vehicles you have. Right now I'm in my Jeep Cherokee. If I were picking bees up in that, yeah, you're going to have some extra bees flying around. I would really suggest you having a sheet. I'm going to use my shirt for, the lack of it. But bring a pillowcase, bring a sheet, and go.
It calms them down.
And you're not going to have a whole ton of bees flying around in the cab of your vehicle that you're swatting and being, freaked out about having a car accident on the way home, all right? Seriously. If you have an open whatever vehicle, consider making sure you have something. Go ahead. I saw a hand. Martin?
Oh, enjoy, what I like to say is, after my first time, enjoy your bees while they're in the white, while they're in like the plastic or the other. Like when you take out the sugar water, put your hand over it. It's kind of the neatest sensation to feel all these little bees tickling the bottom of your
Tickling,
hand.
tickling.
They're not trying to sting you.
They're not.
But they're just crawling all over your hand, and it's a sensation that you need to experience. You need to understand that at this point when they're in there, they're not aggressive.
They're not. They're really just totally like, we want out, we want in a house, and then we'll get aggressive if we need to. We just really want to be with mama at this point. So, when I first started beekeeping, they actually would have a piece of plywood, melamine, whatever, over top of this can, which was really helpful. I don't know how they're doing it now. Mostly I'm doing splits and catching the swarms at this point, so I'm really not buying bees as much as I used to. I'm just not. So, hive tool, your choice, but if your bees are coming in with that piece of wood, that's actually helpful, because you're gonna be prying your can out. It's usually pretty easy at that point, just to, you pry the wood off, and now you can get your can. Can lifts pretty easy until you get to that bottom. Now it's a pain in my butt. I can't. Now all of a sudden, oh! You see how that popped loose?
And the 100 bees just came out.
1,000.
Okay.
Okay? 100 is like that many bees, all right? Remember what half a cup of bees is? 300. So it could be a little bit of a challenge popping this loose. You may have to get your hive tool in here, whatever, and pry this thing loose. These are a little bit more forgiving because they're milled and it's plastic, but they'll still have a little bit of resistance when it's popping loose. If this is what you've got, if that's what you got, and you do not have a piece of wood over top of it, stop, go get milk carton that's empty, cereal,
Cardboard.
A piece of cardboard, a piece of, I don't know, if you go to Harmon's, the paper sack, something. When you pull this off, cover it up with that piece of whatever, okay? So, we've got our bees.
Okay, Mike, while you're still on the box, what is an acceptable, we know that some of the bees are gonna die.
Yep.
What's an acceptable amount before you raise a concern to your vendor, your suppliers?
20% maybe.
Okay.
You're gonna have dead bees in these boxes, both of them. You're gonna have dead bees in there. They're older bees. Some of them are gonna be nurse bees, but they've been transported. I would say somewhere between 15 to 20% loss in this process is acceptable. You start hitting 40%, 50%, I'm gonna have a problem. I'm gonna be going, what in the heck? But realize that, we're talking in the very first, package, because as those bees go the next 2 weeks, you could probably still see 30% loss on what the original package was because of the age of the bee. Does it make sense? Now, as the queen's released, as she starts laying eggs, I'm going to be a very bad graph. These are my existing bees, these are my eggs. Does that make sense? Okay. So eggs are starting to be hatched, these bees are dying, these bees are taking off. So on a new package, it's not surprising to see, 50% loss, 70% loss before you actually overcome that with the bees that are being hatched out. And they have graphs and stuff, and that's not part of exactly, but thank you for the question.
And you won't see any of her bees being hatched for 21 days.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
And that's
she
if
lays
you've already
today,
got,
it's not gonna hatch for 21 days. You're gonna lose a lot of bees in between.
In between.
Nothing's
Yes.
taking their spot.
that's if you've got comb in your hive. So most of the
Yeah.
time,
Right.
so we're gonna get to that, but as we're putting them in our packages, a lot of our new packages just have your bare plastic in there and they haven't built out combs. So those bees that are coming have to build out comb before she can start laying, right?
Yep.
So we're
So-
back at taking the can out.
Well, we're gonna leave the can in for a minute. So she mentioned, you've got plastic in these, you've got foundation of some sort, okay? I typically, when I'm doing a package, it's been outside, all right? So the spider got in there and is now dead. Goodness gracious. I'm pulling out, I only brought 9 frames, sorry. Pretend this is 4 frames. I'm pulling 4 frames out and I'm setting them off to the side. In climate weather, it's going to be raining, it is raining. Okay? You have a secondary box ready to go. You have an inner cover ready to go. Okay? We want to get these bees knocked to the bottom. Bees just went to the bottom of the box, bottom of the cage. Pop that loose, get it up here. I've got my cardboard, I've got the board that was on the top, whatever. Bees are still at the bottom. If they're not, go ahead and give them another knock. Get them to the bottom of the box. Pop this out, set it off to the side. I've either put my hand over top of this or I have put that wood back over top of it. Give them another knock if they get up on top. Now, I'm doing this quick. You're going to be nervous. Okay? So, don't be afraid to knock them back down to the bottom. Get my queen cage, pull it out, I cover this back up. This is going to still be covered in bees. Yep, queen's alive. Nope, queen's dead. Good.
So you mentioned that they're not aggressive. Do you normally do this barehanded then?
Maybe.
People on
You're saying
YouTube,
cover it up
people on
and put it in,
YouTube,
but-
you
Yeah,
guys
you
are our
do.
commercial people. Do you guys do it barehanded?
No.
People on YouTube, and there's a chick that wears
I don't.
Daisy Dukes, and she wears cowboy boots.
Yes.
Have you seen her?
And-
Texas something.
She's amazing. I'm like looking at her like, whoa. No, I do not do anything without protection on.
I wear my PPE, okay? I just do. Now, do I throw my hood up over top of my head? Maybe, maybe not. But I've got my gloves on, and I've got my jacket, and it's zipped up. Because if shit goes wrong, okay, and it potentially can. If things go sideways, and you're being little Miss Daisy Duke over here in a tank top and cut off shorts, and you happen to have a bad day, the bees have a bad day, and all of a sudden you wind up with an anaphylactic shock, you're in a world of shit.
Oh, it's on it.
It's a boss.
So I'm pretty blunt with everything. You want to be all that, a cup of tea, that's fine, but be prepared. Okay? So,
What is it?
It's a wasp.
Kill it.
I'm trying.
nice job.
Just grab it, throw it out.
Asshole. Trying to crash the party, but that didn't work out very well, did it?
I smell the wild wax in here.
All right, so we've got our queen cage out. We've got our board back on here. We're looking at our queen and we're good to go. Okay? I hate these cages. And the reason I hate these cages is because they always tag this metal on the back side rather than on the side. I wish these professional, commercial beekeepers would start thinking about this, going, hey, we're going to take this queen cage and we're going to stick it in here. You do not want to take, you've got plastic foundation here, you do not want to take this screen and you do not want to smash it up against here, up against that plastic. She will not thank you. Right there, you will now have a dead queen, I promise you. You want that queen so that she is in this position so that they can get to her. Now what did that just do to my metal here?
They gotta, yeah.
I got to twist it and try to hold it in position, and these things get fragile and weak and they break. All right, so there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can do what I just did, twist the metal around and keep that queen smashed up this way so that they can have access to her this way. You can also take a rubber band and
Big one.
a bigger rubber band, obviously, and you can lay it like this on the frame, screen up, so that if she's not being accepted, she can get to the bottom of that cage. So it's hanging like this, screen's on top, but they can still get to the bees that are there, and they can still feed those nurse bees that are, or attendants that are feeding the queen. But you do not want to roll it this direction with that screen to that plastic. Okay, be very, very careful when you're doing that. That's one thing I'll tell you. So this is now hanging, depending on which method you use.
You gotta
Like I
realize
said, this
these
is-
packages have most of the time just been put together about 3 days before they're shipping. So these bees do not know this queen.
Right.
They are not a family yet. And when he talks about having access to the bottom of that queen cage, it is so that those other bees don't get in there and sting her and kill her. That she has an out to be down away from them a little bit.
I figured out where the bees come from.
They're from you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Yeah, so as we're putting this package in this hive and we're giving them those days with the cork or the marshmallow, Mike's gonna talk about that for her to get out. It's giving them time to be a family, for them to get used to her pheromones.
So anyway, this is the position that you're going to have her in ultimately.
Question then, Shelley
Yes.
and Mike. So when you get your colonies, and is there a timing that you're talking about? Because I've seen on YouTube where they do what they do call a cold entry or something. They just do it immediately when they get to get home, because they said that they see the bees and how they even built a comb around the queen, and they feel like that they could just put them all in at once right away.
Your package isn't going to be like that.
Okay, then give us some guidance on timing.
That's what he's going to do. So they're going to have been together for just a few days. Lee Knights are shipped out of California. A lot of these local companies, Homers, and I saw a guy out of Eagle Mountain advertising on our Utah County site today. So they're just putting their packages together right now. We've got these guys up front here that are just bringing bees back from California that are busting the seams, getting ready to split their bees. So those bees, as they're splitting them and putting them with new queens, they've only been together for a few days. And so now as we're putting them in here, we want to have about 3 days that they're going to be in here before we check on them and make sure she's now getting released.
So typically you're gonna be talking about 3-day transport time, then you're talking about 3 to 7 days introduction time once you receive the bees and hive them. So a total of 7 to 10 days before this queen should be released. Gives them plenty of time to get used to her pheromone, realize that they are queenless and this is now mama. That make sense? Okay, so we've pulled our queen out and we understand that she's good to go. Okay, cork. Where's that plastic one that I passed out? Did it make it all the way up, all the way around?
I don't think it went up this side.
Okay. I have another plastic one around here somewhere. There it is. Okay. You'll notice on the plastic one that's going around that it has a plastic cap on it. Okay. Same doggone thing. You're going to look in there. Yep, queen's good. She's alive. We're going to pull that plastic cap off, and we're very, very carefully and quickly, roundabout way, twist that off. My finger, my index finger, is over top of the hole. My other index finger comes back over top of the hole. Now I've got the cap in my hand and I set it off to the side. Candy corks, different styles. If you're noticing the ones that are coming around, you'll see that one has an actual physical wooden cork in it. Another one, you'll see that it has a plastic tube in it. And then you'll see this style that has the pink cap on it. Whatever you've got, just roll with it, but understand that you've got to get that candy cork or a candy of some sort into this hole without letting the bee go. Okay? Mini marshmallows are fantastic for this. I usually roll up about 2 to 3 of them in my fingers. And again, it's a very, just as this finger comes up, this finger folds the candy in. Hopefully, if you're paying attention and you're actually looking, you can see when the queen comes down, and you can time it so that she's down at the bottom. Martin?
So on Lee Knight's bees, he'll hand you, before they put them in, they'll hand you the black candy cork.
Yep.
Yes.
So when you get it home, it's gonna have a regular cork in it. You have to carefully take out that regular cork with either a little,
Hive tool.
Hive tool.
with a tool, but you gotta pull that out, and then you have to stuff that black candy cork into it.
Right.
Sometimes that's not easy.
Exactly. So,
Last time mine didn't fit very well.
you're coming out with the cork again. My left finger, if you're left-handed, right-handed, you're going to have to just figure it out. Cork is in there kind of in a sideways angle as what's been coming around. So I'm coming in, I'm pinching the cork, I'm pulling it out, and my finger's going over top of that hole. I'm taking that black thing, and again, I'm looking, where's my queen at? Queen's down there. Okay, she's back to the back. I take my finger off and I put my black candy stuffer in there. Go ahead.
But there's also nurse bees inside there too.
There are nurse bees, so you do need to understand there's going to be about 3 to 5. Normally there should be at least 5 bees in there. Queen
The queen cage?
Yes,
in the queen cage.
with her. And you'll
So they're the
notice-
attendants. So if you don't know this, then this will be a little tidbit of information. The queen does not feed herself. Okay? She is fed by the attendants. So the attendants have to be healthy in there, and the queen has to be healthy in there. So you're making sure that the queen's in there, you're making sure that there are at least 3 to 5 attendants in there with her. Pop that cork out, pop your candy in. Whether it be the black candy that came around, or whether it be your marshmallow that you're given, whatever, you're filling that up. You're then taking that and, like I said, you're gonna attach that here, or you're gonna take a rubber band and you're gonna strap it in the center of that frame, this direction, and hold that in position, okay? That frame then goes on in there, and by the way, just so you know, I've bent that 3 times and it's broken. So like I said, I'm not a big fan of the way they attach these, and I don't know why they don't change it. But that's irregardless. So the queen is now hanging on either the side or she's strapped to the frame. We've got our board over top of this, cardboard, whatever. We're going to give them another knock.
I'll feed the bees.
Yep.
It's freaky the first time.
And then all of a sudden, now your bees are installed in here. Queen's in here. You put this at the bottom front entrance of your hive
There will
on
be
the
some
ground.
bees left in there.
There will be. Okay, now you close up your hive. That's about the long and short of it.
How many frames do you put around?
I pull 4 to 5 frames.
She's in the middle?
She's in the middle. She can be to one side or the other. It doesn't really matter. She doesn't have to be dead center.
Put 2 on each.
But if you look at this, literally, and this is how I would do it, I'd be pulling about 3 to 4 frames out. She is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The rest of these frames, when I set them down, I'm setting them down gently because there's going to be a pile of bees in there that are very disoriented and you don't want to crush them. Just wiggle those frames down gently. You know, let those bees meld and come around those frames. You don't want to just smash them down in. Now, inclement weather. Was there another question?
If you got an in-hive feeder, in
Yes.
other words, one of those that hangs in there,
Yep.
that's gonna take up 2 of your places.
Yep.
So you do that one, plus at least 2, maybe 3,
Yep.
and then
So,
put the rest of them in.
what he's saying is, now I have a hive frame feeder in here. I've pulled 4 frames out. My hive feeder is still on the outside edge. My queen's still in the middle, and then I'm dropping these down in on the edge.
But have your
In
feeder
between.
in there first. You
Yeah.
don't wanna drop them in on the bees, they'll kill them.
What are your thoughts on smoking your bees or spraying them with sugar water before you put it in?
I don't do it.
You won't need to.
You won't need
What
to.
did you?
You had something you were gonna say?
Well, I was gonna do it before you do inclement weather. So these bees, unless you've got some overwintered honey that you're putting in, like Daniel said, we can have an in-hive feeder, so there's several ways to feed them, but your bees typically do not have the resources to feed, and so you're gonna have to have some. Here's some sugar water. You can, I run migratory tops on mine, so I would put my queen off center because I'm gonna put this over my migratory top and let them get that sugar water so that they have some food. And I
So-
don't want it dripping on my queen. Does that make sense?
If you're getting Lee Knight's equipment, he's gonna have a hole dead center here for ventilation.
It's called a migratory top.
Yeah.
You can do the same with the inner cover, I've done it on.
Yeah, so we can put
Yeah.
an inner cover there, put it on top of the inner cover, or set this right on the frames, take Mike's box, and put your lid on there and just have your food sitting up on top of here. Laura?
So, my very first year, I put the queen in, and, that candy cork was like petrified. And it was so hard, and I think that these kind of gave up, because then they started building a home over it, and
gonna talk about that, cause it's gonna be, we're gonna talk about hive inspection. So we're just still at the point of putting this in, and Mike's gonna talk right now about inclement weather, because we're probably gonna have inclement weather. It's supposed to rain tonight, and it's gonna be kinda soggy. A lot of you guys are getting bees on Saturday. You got a 50-50 on how nice it's gonna be Saturday at putting your bees in.
Good?
Put any drawn comb or nectar or?
Yes, if you have the access to drawn comb and some old honey frames, yes. She mentioned that of feeding your bees. Absolutely. Okay? You're getting a brand new package, and if you're doing it, if this is your very first year, okay, none of these frames are going to be drawn out. You need to be feeding these bees all summer long until they freaking don't take it anymore, and more than likely even after that, because they have to draw all these frames out.
I didn't bring any drawn comb, but if you do have drawn comb, great. It saves the bees
A lot of work.
a lot of work, because she cannot start laying until she's got some comb to lay in. And so, you know, you were talking about that, so we've got weeks. Well, they can actually in a week build enough comb for her to start laying.
Oh yeah, she will lay in an empty frame if it has enough wax at the bottom of it. I've seen it. Okay, she'll pick a comb here, and she'll lay an egg, and she'll basically look at all the workers and say, "All right,
Get busy.
get busy. There's an egg, get it protected, because it's going to start growing." So, and then they draw the comb out as that larva grows. So, be prepared and understand that you need to be feeding your bees. And even the honey itself may not, if you've got frames that are basically full of honey, that may not be enough. They still may need to have some sugar water. She was talking about your can or your inner feeder was mentioned, depending on what you're doing. You literally can take this can. Your queen cage is actually 3/4 of an inch. Surprise, surprise. Imagine that. Everything's 3/4 of an inch. Bam. There's your inner feeder for a week or a couple days, depending on how badly they need it. And this also, depending on when it was packaged, could actually be fermented. So they may not want it. If it was packaged last month and it's been sitting in this can and all of a sudden they punch it and do what they do and blah, 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 who knows how good this sugar water is. So I don't typically use this. I put fresh sugar water on. But I'll also use, what are they called? Boardman feeders. I will use a Boardman feeder. Not here. I will not use it here. I have an air cover.
Okay, this is what a Boardman feeder looks like. Kind of like right there, and they.
That's a Boardman feeder.
And then there's a jar that goes on top of it, so it's an entrance feeder. Don't use it.
Don't. Unless you're doing it the way I'm doing it. Doing it that way.
It begs for robbers, it begs for.
I'm doing that. And then I'm
Ants.
sticking my top cover on top of that. Okay? So, getting back to inclement weather, do we beat up the feeding side of things enough that you all understand you need to feed your bees?
One
Do
to
you
one
have a
syrup.
plan on, 1-to-1 sugar water?
Another way to do it is get a mason jar, a quart jar with a lid on it. And if you poke 3 little holes in it or 4 little holes in it, and they need to be little, not very big.
1/32 holds.
You can use that, put it on top and just set it directly down over the hole or whatever, or like that. And it's enough to last them a couple of days. So you want to check it every couple of days to make sure that they have enough.
Literally, I've gotten away from the whole Boardman feeder, and I just take a couple pieces of wood because I've got so many scraps around and I just do that. That's literally all I do. My pint jar, my quart jar, whatever, it's got the lid that's screwed on, it's got the holes in it, and I just set it down and I put another lid or box over top of it and a lid on top of that. So, you know, you're however you're gonna feed. If it's an inner feeder like what Daniel said, or if it's what Martin said, or you want to use your can, you actually have the opportunity to buy a gallon jug, or not a gallon jug, but a bucket. Is it a gallon or a bucket, or a gallon and a half?
1.5, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some big choices. I mean, you could guys, you could take a freaking 2-liter bottle of pop, clean it out, drink it all up, poke 3 or 4 freaking holes in that thing, and go on the top. As long as you've got a hole that's going to keep it from tipping over, set some cinder blocks around it to hold it in position. Get creative. Don't. You can think outside the box.
A gallon Ziploc bag you can put in here and poke some holes in it. The bees will come up and they will get out of that gallon Ziploc bag. So yeah, there's
a lot of different ways to do it.
Back to inclement weather.
Yeah, there's no whatever.
There are wrong ways to do it.
There are wrong ways.
There are definitely wrong ways to do it. So, back to inclement weather. We have our bees still in here, and we have our queen. We've pulled her out, and we've installed her in here. Okay? This actually fits. Put my lid on and I'm running. I'm done. Okay?
You didn't put any bees in the bottom?
They will smell her.
They will go down and
the opening is now open, and they will start. And actually, in some ways, instead of shaking them in there or banging them in there, this is a nice, gentle way. Even if it's not inclement weather, you can do this and come out the next day. They will all be down with her. You can pull that out. You can pull your top box off, and you put your lid back on. You're ready to go.
Yep.
So this is the nice, kind, gentle way, but it's also a great way in inclement weather, less traumatic, less.
And it's quicker, and that's the biggest thing is it's quicker, where you're not, you know, jamming your bees and doing a lot of weird stuff with them. It's just a lot nicer. If you set this down in this position, do y'all have your entrance reducers? Does anybody not have an entrance reducer? Okay, so we all have an entrance reducer. Fantastic. Take that, just slide it in there. Give them a little bit of space either way. Just, you know, tip it up. Good?
One of the other things you want to do when you're putting in a new package, put the entrance reducer on the front of your hive before you put the bees in. Kind of get them, because you don't want people in there robbing, you don't want other things, and it kind of gets them used to the hive. So if you use an entrance reducer to start with, and just get them used to entering the hive at one spot, it helps a lot.
It does. So you can, you know, use this. I actually have multiples. One of the reasons why I like this, it's a nice package. So I can shorten this whatever I want to shorten it to. You know, I'm doing it right on top of the hive. I would not recommend that. Okay? Take it over, set it somewhere else solid. But you can use it kind of as a hatchet if you wanted to lengthen or actually shorten so that you can make that entrance larger.
We want to see it lengthen it.
Yeah. I forgot my board stretcher at home, all right?
Would you use the smaller
bigger one.
So, Martin's brought something up that is important and you need to understand. This larger opening is harder for people to defend, or bees in this case. The smaller one is easier for them to defend. Brand new packages, what do you have to defend? Nothing. Maybe, yes, you may have your cert.
But generally speaking, you only have like 3 holes, right? I mean, so you've got those
Yeah.
bees up there, it's covered, that bottom of your jar is covered.
So-
It's already defended.
Entrance reducers are good in what they're supposed to do, but they can also be hindrance for once it really starts taking off. You need to open that entrance up larger, and once it really starts jamming up here, you need to remove it. So what Martin said is yes, small hole, fall time, when you start dealing with robbing and those kind of things. You want to reduce that probably to this. So you've pulled this out in June. There's no entrance reducer whatsoever. Come July, August, all of a sudden you start having some wasp issues with robbing into the hive. Put the entrance reducer back into the large hole. Okay, so that's not working. You still have an awful lot of robbing. Now we're going to go down to our small hole. If you're trying to guard your own entrance to your home, it's a lot easier to do it if it's this big as opposed to the width of the room. So that's kind of entrance reducer.
So we're going.
When you install though, you can keep it out, just tip that up, put your other box on, lid on. That gives them some room to get out in case, you don't want to pinch bees if you don't have to. I'm losing my tool here.
So we're gonna talk about Laura's question, because she talked about having a candy cork that was rock hard. So we're gonna talk about how many days and going back in, doing initial inspection. But how many of you guys are getting nukes and not packages? Okay, so your nuke is gonna come like this. You're gonna have 5 frames full of bees just like this. You actually have a little teeny bit more time with dealing with it than with a package. So you've got your hive all ready to go, and you have the luxury, you've got your gear on, she's in there. The main important thing in there is that you make sure your queen is coming over to your new hive with you, not staying there. So how do you recommend putting a 5-frame nuke into that?
If it were me,
Yeah.
and I haven't got a nuke before, but this is the way I do it.
And then we'll ask you guys, since you're building nukes right now.
Okay?
We don't know anything.
You don't know anything?
We're here to learn.
They're teaching,
Literally,
they're teaching next month.
I would, pull the frames out, inspect the frames, see if I've got my queen in here. If I do, great. My queen's now into my 10 frame. We're centered in the middle of the box. Okay, we're not off to one side, we're not off to one side, we're centered. Whether it be a 4-frame nuke or a 5-frame nuke, we're centered as best as possible. Didn't see my queen, but I still have this box and it's still got bees in there. Okay, another box on top. I'm going to take that box and we're going to pretend it's this box, but this box is still in place, right? Everybody got that? I'm going to take that nuke, okay? Queen's not in there. Queen's now in here. Done.
So,
If I see the queen in there, then I'll knock it some more until she drops in.
when you're a new keeper, looking at all those bees is like, where's Waldo? Do
Exactly.
you guys agree with that? I mean, now I've been in my hive twice pretty deep, and I've seen her both times, so I feel pretty confident. But that first time, all you're seeing is, holy crap, that's a lot of bees. So, yeah, Norm.
When it's all in a nuke, often sometimes two of the frames are resource frames. Would you hold them right up with the brood, or would you move them so that?
If they're resource frames, what he means is, does this have honey on it? Is it just, are these frames that are totally, mainly all honey and nectar? Okay? Those frames I would still pop out to the outside edges. Okay? Me. And I want to put my brood in the middle. They can still go over and access that, but I don't want them to become honey bound in this narrow area, and then the queen get to the point where she's like, I don't have any room and I don't know where to go, and they've never ever touched these outside frames. You could go ahead and take that 4 frame or 5 frame, stick it in the middle, and see how they do. Maybe even just take 1 frame. Let's say we've got 2 of these. We've got 3 frames. We take and we checkerboard it. So now I've got a resource frame here, a resource frame here, and 2 empty frames on the outside, right? As they start building out, I keep moving the resource out to the outside edge.
So he used a term that you may not know, honey bound. So what he's talking about, when you have a honey frame, that queen looks at that honey frame and she's like, not going there.
I'm not crossing it.
That is kind of a barrier for her. And as we get on and we talk later in the summer and we're putting honey supers on, we will talk about that, because once she bumps into that honey frame, she's like, nope, going back to where I can lay. So that is a barrier that tells her she needs to go. Do you guys agree with that when you're putting a nuke in? I see a smile. What's your tip? Tell us what your tip is.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Tell me your tip.
Checkerboarding, yes.
Checkerboard. Okay,
Okay.
these guys are making nukes right now, so their recommendation, checkerboard.
You checkerboard the whole thing, or leave the 3 brood frames together?
No. You want to leave your brood together because the rest of the bees need to keep that warm.
Right.
But if you space that out, then the bees have to go wider than they probably can to keep it warm. You always want your brood right together, right in the middle. Right together is the big idea.
Goodness
Because
gracious.
the nurse bees have to keep it warm. So, they have to keep that 90 degrees. You don't want an empty frame in between 2 brood frames, because then that's more space they have to keep warm that doesn't really need to be warm. See? So keep your brood together, but then on the outside of your brood you can have some empty frames where the queen can lay to before there's resources. The queen doesn't want to go across the honey frame looking for an empty frame to lay in. She won't do that. So if there's plenty open space within your brood, you may not need an empty frame this week. But before long, she's going to need that empty frame to move into, because she wants to lay at least 1,000 eggs a day this time of year.
Two things.
In a really heavy flow, she wants honey flow, nectar flow, a lot of blossoms. She can lay up to 3,000 a day.
I wish mine laid 3,000
So
a day.
there's 3,000 cells on a deep frame
Wow.
each side.
Yep.
Each
So
side.
there's 6,000 on both sides. So if that kind of gives you an idea how long, or how much time you've got before you need to give her another new frame to lay on, then you just kind of got to watch. That's why inspections are so important, and you got to keep up with what she needs. You can't just install your bees and walk away for 2 weeks and think that everything's going to be rosy, because
That is-
especially
In
with
two-
new,
in
you
2
gotta
weeks,
keep
if
it
you-
there,
if-
you gotta keep up with what she wants to do.
If you had inclement weather and you've got this and you've stuck it in there, in 2 weeks, if you have not pulled this out and pulled this off, you're gonna have a mess.
Shame on you.
You're gonna have an absolute freaking mess. Because the bees are gonna come up into the top and they're gonna start doing wax whichever and every which way they can. If they could be inside this box, they could be inside this box, they could be doing it on the top of your board lid, they could be, it's gonna be a mess. So within 24 to 48 hours, you need to go out and you need to pull this off. Okay? That's gonna be very important. If by chance you want to do it a different direction, and I've seen this, where you just reduce it down to one box and you put this in here, again, you need to go get this box out within 24 to 48 hours. Otherwise, they're going to start cross-combing all over the place in around this box and on the lid. Yes?
Is it okay if I just strongly encourage they don't add a second box?
Yeah.
So,
Even though I said you're adding a second box, all you're doing is enlarging the top area.
You're not putting frames.
You're not actually putting frames in this.
It's just there for 2 days.
It's
And I
just there
think
for
when
2
you're
days
new
and then you're
bee-
pulling it back
When
off.
we're new beekeeper, we
Thank
are
you for
so
clarifying
anxious to
that
add
for me.
another box and add more frames. But we're not going to do that. So we are gonna answer Laura's question, the cork. So in 3 to 5 days, after we've added our queen in here, we are coming back in and getting into our hive. We are going to wait till we have a nice day. No rain, no cloudiness, no stormy getting ready, middle of the day. I don't know why I thought that I'm gonna get in there early in the morning.
That's
Not
bad.
a good idea. Everybody's home, they haven't gone out to work. You open the lid of that hive and you got pissed off bees coming at you. So midday, you got all your foragers out, they're out doing their thing, it's nice and warm, and you come in and you're gonna come in there gentle. I always recommend having smoke ready to go. Lighting a smoke can is an art in and of itself. Learn how to light your smoke can. I like to use some smoker chips in mine. They light up really quick. I quilt, and so I've got fabric scraps. If you've got old denim, you can make old denim strips that burns good.
Tumbleweed works good.
Tumbleweed probably does, especially when you're out. And I have a little creme brulee torch. It's $9 off of Amazon. It's perfect.
Dry grass.
Anyway,
That's
Yeah.
what I do when my smoker starts going out and I'm out by the hives.
so I have a smoker ready to go. It doesn't mean we're gonna use it.
Traeger pellets.
Okay,
Sound good.
so we're
That's-
gonna,
That's those pellets.
Yeah, that's what these are, trigger pellets.
your rule of thumb is 50 degrees.
And that's all you put in, are the pellets?
I hardly ever use my smoker, but yes.
So you're saying 50 degrees, that's your
I
ideal time to open
usually
your box,
don't get
at least.
in.
Got it.
into your house.
So
Yeah.
bees typically won't fly unless it's about 50 degrees outside.
I like to
So-
wait until
Heavily, yes.
60.
So usually, I mean, that's your bare minimum. I would
Yeah.
recommend not going below that, because to your point,
I
I mean, if
agree.
you're sitting any higher, I think for us in the last month, we've been working, we probably got a smoker out maybe twice, and we've been into them pretty heavily. I don't like smoking bees personally. And so when you get into the lower temperatures, you're gonna start seeing more aggressive bees when, again, they're protecting themselves, they're protecting the hive.
And you're also chilling your babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where it's, again, with the weather right now, if you look at the forecast, make sure it's above 50, and if it's not, then just hold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's too cold, then see, now you're taking that temperature away from that brood that those bees are trying to keep warm. You know, it's just like opening your front door and your back door together in a snowy day. You're letting all that heat away from your brood and it's gonna die. And so you don't wanna be in there if it's not warm, you know, because your nurse bees can't keep that brood warm and it'll die.
And I was gonna say another quick tidbit too with new beekeepers when you're trying to build out your comb. If you go buy some beeswax, if you don't have double dipped or however you have your hives, if you take a beeswax and just grind it against the actual frame itself, it's gonna start to leave a residue for you, and the bees will take to that and they'll actually start building out farther. So just a little quick tip, if you have new comb that you've never drawn, go buy some beehive and scrub it pretty good, and it'll give them something to actually adhere to and start growing quicker.
I have never ever been a fan of this light colored plastic. I actually I should have saved it because I just melted it down this week.
Janelle,
Where
is there a black?
it was
Black
built
deep
this
back there.
direction because they would not build on this.
See, every time I've seen, it's been the black ones that they do that to. They don't like the black ones.
And there's two reasons, and you know, really what it boils down to is it sticky? Does it have, you know, this kind of build up like what he was saying? Take some beeswax and scrape it across it. Get the wax heavy build on the frame itself, because they'll build right off of it. And I've had it even parallel where they'll build the frame above the plastic, whether it be black or yellow, but especially on the yellow. And the second part of the reason why I don't like yellow is because I can't see the eggs.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm 53 years old and I'm blind as a bat anyway, and so trying to.
Like, one comment on if they do build out from the edge, sometimes their first instinct will be to squish it down, make them build right. There's a risk in that. If your queen happens to be up there laying or doing something, you may squish your queen.
Yeah, if she's underneath that and you go like this and try to force it down in there.
It's kind of a, you know, beekeeper choice if you're going to try to force it down, but you do be very careful.
Hey, Mike,
Sorry.
didn't you say when we got these, that these were pre-waxed?
They're double waxed.
Tell me why that isn't working,
Why it isn't working?
why you would recommend rubbing the wax.
Because you still need more wax.
We get double dipped, and so we don't have to do that per se, to your point. But a lot of these, if you're going to Cal Ranch, IFA, they don't really have the wax buildup that you need, and so it's going to give them something to start. But if you got double dipped, we also lean. Two of us run one way, Curtis runs different. Ours are all completely plastic. So we've got a completely plastic frame, so it's a little bit different. They just dip them and go. I would say, and I'd recommend an in-hive feeder, again, and you can buy a gallon feeder in there. With newbies, they're gonna go through the 1-to-1 ratio in about 3 days if you have active bees. So you're gonna be constantly feeding that. The other thing you haven't talked about, which I would highly recommend, is a pollen patty, especially in the spring because of the brood stock and the build. So if you don't have pollen patties, I would highly encourage slap one on the top, and you can talk through that process as well.
Yep. So back to the frame real quick. Easier to see the eggs on the black. Not so easy to see the eggs. This is not a bad deal for a honey frame, since it's locked in here, as long as it's double dipped and it's got a good plastic, you know, or a good coating of wax, you should be fine.
Now, anybody that did it through the group buy, those were all double dipped frames.
Okay.
You don't need to worry about it.
Okay, I'm gonna getting back on track here.
Thank you,
Promise.
because,
Okay.
and I still need to talk about that and
Okay.
what you've mentioned.
Here is, we're 3 to 5 days. It's Saturday, we put this in, so we've got Saturday morning, depending on when you got in with Lee Knight, he gives you a time. So it depends on if you're morning, afternoon, or when you're getting yours. So you've installed your package, and here's Laura's
Jammed up, dried out candy corn.
from hell. And so she's been in here for 3 days, so now 3 to 5 days. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the following week, you're gonna watch the weather pattern to see when you're gonna get back in and do your initial inspection. And she's in here, and
Whichever.
whatever, I've got her
So you're
bed.
pulling her out.
Well, no, we're gonna come in, take the lid off, have your smoke ready. You may not use it. They, at this time of year, pretty gentle. At least in my experience, have been pretty gentle.
Provided you've got some warm weather, like he said, you know, I typically, I don't like getting into my hives until 60 to 70 degree weather. I will do it slightly earlier and, at a lower temperature, but I don't necessarily recommend new beekeepers doing this just because you're gonna be hyped up anyway on nervousness. Don't make it worse on yourself than what's necessary. But don't have wind, don't have an incoming storm. It could be overcast, but don't have that barometric pressure dropping where you've got rain coming in. Even if the queen has not been released, those bees are going to be pissed that you opened up that hive. 50-degree weather, fine, it is what it is. You've got to get her out and make sure she's good to go. But consider what's going on with the weather. Not a whole lot of wind. Middle of the day is probably better.
Not dusk.
Huh?
Not dusk.
Like I said, middle of the day.
Yep. So one thing.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you're probably good. 6, 7, 8, you're probably pushing it.
Initially, when you're getting into your brand new hives, they haven't built propolis. Propolis is the gorilla glue on earth. And so when your new hive you're gonna get in, it's not gonna take much for you to get in and just pop your cover. Pop your cover. I usually work for my hive from the side. I don't work directly because you've got bees, air traffic control coming in and out of your hive. I work from the side, I pop it, I take that lid and I put it away from me. This is waist high, but most of us have our stands down. And
Bottom of that hive's
and
gonna
when
be
you
about
set
14,
the top,
18
when you
inches
set
off
that
the
top lid down, and if it's right by your ankles, they're gonna come sting your ankles unless you got boots on or something covering your ankles. So then I come, and on an older hive, you're gonna have propolis gluing your frames down, but I loosen everything up. Sorry, Mike, taking over.
Nope, you're good.
Getting to Laura's question before it's 9 o'clock tonight. Typically, your outside frames have no action going on them. So I lift them up, look and see that I have no action going on them. I, number one, want to see if anything's going on, but I want to make sure my queen is not on this frame. So I always hold it over the hive, and then I bring it and set it off to the side. There are tons of different commercial things. You can buy a little frame, yeah, big deal. So then I work it, I look, nothing there, coming, and I slide it over. The rest of my frames, I typically leave in the hive, because now I've got space to work in here and don't have to
So
take
you're
them
only
out.
pulling one frame out?
1 or 2, and then I look
See,
at it.
I do 3.
I look at them, but as long as I've got space to work it, I may take 2 out, but as long as I've got space. So now I've gotten to my queen. And Laura had the plug from hell stuck in here. My queen's still in here, my attendants are still in here.
Can I
What do I do?
I'm sorry,
Yes, go ahead.
I've never seen a package with attendance.
You haven't? I have.
If that's just me or what we run, but I don't wanna scare people. because
To say that they
say
don't have
and all of a
attendance?
sudden it's
Yeah,
like,
last
well,
year
we're-
my queen didn't have any.
So I've seen, all the ones I've seen, and probably because they're all, we order 100 plus or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
So you guys order queens to sell, or queens to split your,
Display.
Yeah, and so I just don't want people to assume that all of a
Okay.
sudden.
Alright.
So that's something I've learned then tonight, because every one that I've ever gotten
Has attendance to it.
has had 3 to 5 attendants, 2 to 3 minimum inside.
So the packages
But-
that we've been working, none of the, and the other thing too, which is gonna be interesting, I'm curious, because you're gonna have queens that are marked and unmarked.
right?
And that's gonna be a huge issue for new beekeepers, because like you said, it's a needle in a haystack, so it'll be interesting to, see what the motive is for a lot of the people, but yeah, I've never, and I just wanna make sure people understand that they may get a queen without a queen attendant, and if you follow the advice.
But even if
They'll have the attendance there.
you have don't have attendants in here, you do have attendants taking care of her.
Yeah.
Right.
So there are bees,
They're
they're
gonna be
typically,
all over that.
Yeah,
That's why I never knock the bees off the outside, because mine has never come.
yeah,
right,
so just.
I'll knock them off so that I can see if the queen's in there. They're gonna come right back to her.
And as you build out or your hive builds out, rule of thumb, the outer 4 frames the outer 2 frames on each side.
right,
90% of the time, you're not gonna see the queen. And that's typically the honey hives, and that's where all of the pollen goes. The queen's typically not gonna be out there unless you open the hive and you start pushing her down. Again, so you're pulling those outer frames, 90% of the time, you're not gonna see her there.
Right, right. So you're working your way in to get to your queen. So now after 3 to 5 days, this hive should be used to her, but they could not be. What are your telltale signs that you know that they haven't accepted her?
Typically, if I have a queen that's not been accepted, you know, I'll take the thing and I'll, you know, knock bees off, because it's just gonna be a clump of bees, okay? So I'll knock it loose and I'll set it over here and I'll see what happens. Do we have a few bees that come over here, just a few, and they're being nice to her. They're not biting at the cage, they're just, maybe you wind up with 10 or 15 bees over here, yes?
Absolutely.
If I knock those bees off and I set her off to the side and I wind up with 300 bees on there, they're not happy with her. Stick her back in and let them get used to her for 2 to 3 more days. Do it again. Knock them off. I bet you by that time you'll have 15 bees that come over and start looking at her and going, hey, what are you doing, mama? Usually by that, you're 7, now you've actually had the package of bees for 7 to 10 days. They're going to be used to her by that point. Or there could be actually another queen in here. That's not been uncommon that you get 2 queens. One that's actually just wound up in the package itself, and then another queen in the cage. Well, they're not going to accept her because she's not loose, and they've accepted the other one. So they're not happy with this queen. So look through and see if you've got another queen, because if you've got another queen in here and she's laying by that point, guess what? There's $35 in your pocket.
Guess what? You just freaked out 90% of these people.
But literally, I mean, they'll be pretty nice to her. You know, lay her on top here. If they just kind of come up and look at her, great.
So now what are you doing? Laura's got the plug from
All
hell.
right,
What are
plug
you
from
doing?
hell.
Okay, they're nice to her.
They're nice
now
to
what
her.
are we gonna do? Takes the plug from hell.
Let her out.
You pull
And
it.
I'm gonna let her out.
Okay, are you going to watch her leave, or are you just gonna hang her?
I'll probably watch her leave, because she's not gonna stick around in that cage very long.
Will she fly out?
No,
She won't fly. You want to make sure
wants
you
to
watch her
hide.
crawl down into that
Yeah.
hive.
So you're just gonna kind of corks out here, let her go. Now, if she does fly, which she could, but she probably won't. If she does, you're just gonna stand there. I've had queens fly on me. Yes, no?
Yes. So here's the Shelley way of doing it. I poke that entrance, that down, and I watch her crawl down, and she'll crawl down on a frame. And then she's down there to stay. But if you have it like this, yes, she could fly. And we have seen them fly. There was a guy that posted on Facebook recently that he's putting his package in and his queen flew, and he was looking for a queen. So yeah, that's another 90% of the people out here freaking. Yeah, so.
Well, hey, I've had a queen fly on me.
I know, it's scary.
And I've had her fly right back down to the hive.
Yeah.
And I just stand there and I wait, you know. I just kind of like, you know,
So we
she
now
looked
let
around at
her
me,
in.
she looked around at what her surrounding was. and-
So she's now in there and she's in a frame.
Am I wrong?
Okay, new people. The number
It
one
is
thing that
disappointing.
we do not want to do is kill our queen, right? She's in here, we gently start sliding these frames over. We do not want to have her walking in on the ends and us taking these frames and shoving them over and squishing our queen, or rolling our queen, or killing our queen. So we slide them all over, put our frames back in, put our lid back on, and now we are going to close this thing up.
To elaborate on that, especially with your new hive, and I'm assuming without frame, you don't want buttress on the inside of your frames, and so if they're not built out yet, you're gonna squish everything together, and you're gonna have a pretty decent space on each side.
Right.
But again, you wanna slam all those frames as hard as you can together in the middle, so you'll balance each side.
Gently, but,
Gently.
but as solidly as possible,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, but what you were saying was, if you have to release your queen, make sure you release your queen between two frames that are tight.
Yeah.
So, and then they never move, so there's no chance that you could squish her.
Good
So
idea.
You put a couple frames together tight, and then you let your queen down into the tight frames, and then you build from the outside.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, so now she's in there.
Throw
And
Paul and Patty on top.
yeah, but what they were talking about, if any of you think that you're going to put your bees in and leave them, and in the summer with the honey flow, you're gonna put a honey super on, and then at Labor Day, you're gonna take the honey super off, and you guys are all gonna enjoy honey and peanut butter sandwiches. That isn't the way life is. You are a beekeeper. You are bee farmers. You are taking care of these bees. And so, especially in the new package, we are going to get in 7 to 10 days and check our bees again. So, same thing. We start from the outside, like these guys said. She's not probably going to be on the outside. We're going to loosen up. Look at this frame. They build resources. They start building honey out there. But I'm going to get in and see if she's laying. And I've got some pictures in here. So what we're going to be looking for. And this is if you are looking at bee cycles and understanding when you're laying, she's laying eggs, how many days it takes for eggs to larvae to bees. So this, you were talking about a marked queen. I've had marked queens. Guess what? I was no better at finding a marked queen as I am a regular queen. Unless she's right there, and oh, there she is, yeah. So there's a marked queen.
You wanna tell about the color, just so people.
So every year they have a different color so that you know what year queen that is. So this year, what color is it?
Yellow.
So last year it was.
White.
So if you have a white marked queen that's coming in your package, what does that tell you? You have a year-old queen. She isn't a brand new queen, so you may get through this year with her, but you need to keep your eye on her and see if she's got good resources laying for you. So she's long, slender, so she does look different from the other bees. But the first time you get in there looking and you think, I'm gonna find her. My first, and again, I went to the Lee Knight School of Beekeeping. When you're first getting in doing your inspections, you aren't looking necessarily for the queen. You are looking to see what's going on in here. So now I'm 2 or 3 frames in, and now I come to a frame. I don't see the queen because there's so many bees there, but I usually hold my frame over my hive so that if she's there, she'll jump right back in. And I like to have the sun over my shoulder just because I have those old people eyes. But if the sun's over my shoulder, I can look, and as I'm looking with the sun, you will see those little eggs in there. And it is so cool that first time, and you're like, there's the eggs. And then once I see signs of life, and I see that she's doing what she needs to do, I get out of Dodge. I don't know what you guys feel.
You don't have to see the queen if you see that.
Exactly.
She was there within a day, right?
There's signs of life, right? That's a day, those are day-old eggs. That's signs of life. Once I see signs of life and I know my queen's in there and she's doing what she's supposed to be doing, and just looking at my other bees, I don't see any other sign of disease, I get out of there. But as you get in, and now we're looking at that package, and now we're starting to get some capped brood. So here's brood that they've now got cap on it, and you're looking at all those bees, and I see that. Here's my queen, but
Right dead center of the frame is
you
queen.
see her? She's right here. once I see signs of life again. So, gonna lay, and then the outside edges on the rainbow, this is where they put resources. You'll see pollen, which they call bee bread, and you'll see honey will start
Forming on the top,
Yep.
top corners.
This is a good frame. As you guys have new comb and new brood being laid, this is the pretty color it's going to be. It's just so pretty. And you can see different levels of gestation here. I've got different larvae up in here. I've got some that are getting ready to be capped, got capped. That's it on that.
Did you want to, one thing too, the way you're holding your frame, just make sure that when you are grabbing it, you're on the tips and not on the sides. A lot of new beekeepers will kind of manhandle it. And if you have the queen on, typically if you pull the queen out in a frame, she's trying to duck or she's trying to hide. And so a lot of times she'll go back and forth.
Yep,
If you're
she'll go
holding it
end on end.
on the
Or
sides.
sides,
There's a
where your
possi-
fingers are at right now.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, smashing the frame like this on the edges is what he's saying. Here to here, you can be smashing your queen and not even know it.
And
So it's just the grabbing the ears. You know, keeping a hold of the ears. And that's another thing, you know, yeah, I do wear my gloves, I do wear my PPE. You could possibly, and I know some beekeepers will get, you know, some rubber gloves. The upside of that is you have your dexterity. You can feel, you know, kind of pressing on the bee. Real quick.
Are those like titanium rubber gloves? Because I was wearing latex gloves and I got stung with them.
I'm not saying you can't. You actually can. I just said I know some beekeepers, and I just brought them because I know some beekeepers that will use them.
It's okay, I have leather on and they stung through that.
Yeah.
So-
Laura, what I recommend is either getting some Playtex dish gloves
Okay.
or go get the 9mm gloves from Harbor Freight. You can either double glove, but I have not had a problem wearing single gloves.
Okay.
The 9mm Harbor Freight ones.
I use one of those spring grabbers
Yes.
because when you're messing with the brood, they climb up on your hands and they're trying to sting. So they climb up on the frame grabber and they don't climb up on your hand. I don't know, it's just,
Usually, if I ever use smoke, the reason I'm using smoke is just to smoke myself.
Yeah.
Smoke my own hands.
Which deters them.
Mhm.
or you just stop beekeeping.
Yeah.
Or you just stop beekeeping, yeah. So, we've gone, you know, through putting the queen in, releasing her, looking for larvae, looking for eggs, specifically the eggs, hopefully a couple larvae as you're getting in there. And you're a week into it, maybe, you know, 10 days. You're making sure that, you know, your frames are, like he said, smashed together, even space on both sides, not just all smashed up on one side, because if you do that, they're gonna build some foam over here, it's gonna be a mess, so you wanna make sure that you're evened up on both sides. Whether you've got a tool like this, or the one that I prefer, it's the same thing, just making sure that it's, you know, even, and that they're smashed together. Literally, depending on how much you're feeding, what the weather is going to be like, and so on and so forth, they could potentially fill this box within what, 2 weeks, week?
It's gonna depend. The one, and I don't know if you're gonna go there, but, the extra box that you're looking for, maybe I'm skipping ahead. Basically, you're looking for the bees to have about 8 frames built out.
7 to 8 frames built out before you add actually another box of frames on top.
And for
And
whatever
that's-
reason, depending on, and you mentioned it earlier, for instance, if they're not getting to the ends, frames, and they're struggling depending on their, how they're building out the comb, again, checkerboard. So pull an end frame out and stick it right in the middle. And that'll get them going, so you can make sure that all of your comb's being drawn out. So don't,
Do you understand what he's saying?
The
Don't-
checkerboarding?
don't be, I
Okay.
mean, new beekeepers, of course, I think we're all afraid, but
Yeah.
they're pretty resilient little things, and so don't be afraid to go in there and start checkerboarding if you need to build it out, because they'll finally, oh, we gotta build this frame.
So when
Especially if better
when I'm pulling my outside frames, typically those frames aren't, they haven't started working it. Before you add another box, the big thing that new beekeepers wanna do is to add that next box. I'm ready to add a next box. We don't add a next box until they're working 7 to 10 frames. Does that mean that I pulled outside 3 frames and I get in on the 7th and guess what? I got bees walking around on it. I got bees. They need to be building out comb. They need to be doing their business. And if they aren't doing their business, do not add a box. So now they are doing their business, but they're not working on these outside frames. He's talking about checkerboarding. Checkerboarding is when I take a blank frame from the outside and I move one of these frames that they are working on. I like to keep my brood together though. And I put that in, okay? So I pull the frames that they're working on, pull them out, and then put this in. Does that make sense? Okay, that's
One of the
checkerboarding.
reasons why she's wanting to protect her brood chamber or her brood cluster right there is weather and cold. Like it was mentioned earlier about getting into your hive and chilling your brood, you don't want to chill your brood. More than likely by the time we're having problems where they're not building out here and we're gonna start checkerboarding, we're probably into end of May, June. We're really not worried about 30-degree weather at night or even during the day at that
Well,
point.
I don't know the expectation with most beekeepers here, but if you're, with those that are buying newts, there's a good probability you can get honey. It's gonna be a stretch, but if you're brand new with no brood, with no comb, it's gonna be a push. because
It's gonna be a push to be trying to get any honey. I hope that you aren't expecting to get honey this first year on a brand new package.
Yeah, so that's the least that you need to be worrying about. You need to be worrying to make sure that they got enough bees in the comb so they can overwinter.
Yeah. Biggest thing this first year is going to be getting them to where you can have them next year. Next year, yes, you should be starting to get some honey off that at that harvest point. Ma'am, you had a question earlier and I didn't get back to you and I'm sorry.
Yes, some people are using smokers and some people are not. What is the purpose of smoke?
Smoke typically helps to calm/disorient the bee. Okay, they're very pheromonic insects. Okay, they're gonna smell perfume, shampoo, all of those things.
Don't eat a big steak and go out and
Don't go
in
walking
your
out there with a freaking banana. Okay? Banana is if you ever get stung on your nose, you're gonna have banana cream pie sitting on your nose. The very first breath you take after being stung on your nose, tell me I'm wrong. Banana cream pie. Yes? Have you never been stung on the nose?
I was just laughing. Last year I was in a bee suit and we worked the apiary and I got stung 11 times with my suit on. So
Right.
I mean, you think, oh, I'm protected. They're gonna find a way.
Yeah, they can find a way,
So,
but
The solution to that though is if you have just the top, tuck it in your pants. If you have the whole suit, zip the bottoms. Because if they're flying around you and they're crawling up your pants, you're in a bad spot.
yeah. Now see, I do extractions. Okay, so I go into a house and I'll cut into the ceiling and I'll pull bees out of the ceiling or out of the soffit. I wear a jacket. By the time I'm done, my jacket's pretty much off and I'm still working bees. It's weird. But if I go into my hive sometimes, they're madder than hornets.
and that's the other-
It's just a weird.
You'll know if you have some hives are really nice, and other I've had hives that it doesn't matter. They're as aggressive as you can ever imagine. So you're gonna get a mix of both. And if you've got aggressive bees, use smoke. If you don't, again, we rarely use smoke. So
Yeah, I never smoke.
I also
When I'm
kind
doing
of,
the extractions, I'm never smoking them.
I feel like I've got 10 minutes So I have about 10 minutes that I can gently get in my hive, see what's going on and mess with them before they start bumping and they tell me, we've had enough of you, lady, you're done for the day. So that's kind of my rule with my hive, is about 10 minutes. So get in, do my business, and get out of there. So know what you're going in for when you're getting in a hive. Don't just get in it for no reason. Janelle? Oh, yes, sir.
One thing that works really good, especially second year, if you have some crazy bees, just take a bath towel, cut it in half, put it over the top. You gotta get to your first frame, just fold it back a little bit, pull that one out. They'll stay in there, they'll be warm, they'll stay calm. When you get past halfway or whatever, put the other part of the towel up and just
Work
act
it
like
the
a
other-
surgeon,
work it
just
from
work
the
your
other
way
direction.
across and work your way back.
There are some,
It works out really
there are
well.
some beekeepers who have canvas that they,
Yeah, you
that
use
they put
canvas.
on, they put on that high, and run it
The
like an
bath towel
inner
works
cover,
for
yeah,
us.
yeah. Good idea, thank you.
Did you say wet?
No.
I didn't know.
All right, I guess,
Janelle, did you have another question back there?
do we have questions? I mean, we've got 15 minutes till it's 9, and I know that people enjoy a Q&A time. Yes,
My biggest fear is installing a new package is the bees absconding. How do you prevent that?
Did they what?
they're gonna stay with your queen.
Yeah, they,
That was my greatest fear too.
They'll stay with their queen. Most of the time when bees abscond, and you guys can jump in here, is that they are swarming, or the mite load is too high, or the home that you're giving them is not satisfactory and they've gotta leave and go find a new home. But on a new package,
the new package, they're looking for that new spot.
yeah.
The other thing you can do is do it later toward the evening, because they're not gonna be out buzzing away, they're gonna stay there.
But your queen's gonna be in the cage, they're gonna stay with the queen.
The other thing too, when you do a new package, if there's still bees in there, just set them down by the end, just set the plastic thing down by the entrance. By the end of the night, they'll figure out where the queen is and they'll just fly up.
Move up
It's
to
not
her.
gonna be totally empty. You don't wanna sit there and shake it till it's totally empty.
Right.
You can leave some bees in there and let them fly.
It's kind of neat, they actually just make a trail and they
Yes,
just go right.
it is cool.
They
Right
follow
in.
each other right into the hive. You set that little cage in front of the hive or up a ramp. If your hive is up off the ground, take a board and set it there. They'll just walk right, they just, like army ants, you've seen the pictures of army ants. They'll follow each other right up into that hive.
Even though it's not their queen, there's a scent, there's a pheromone that she's putting on there going to the hive.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting question. So if you have hives that are stacked together, 4 or 5, and you're switching and pulling out hives, this is when you get a little bit more complicated, but you can start throwing different frames in different hives, and for the most part, the bees will come back and, yeah, they'll accept each other for the most part. There's talk about other bees killing other queens. They're not as aggressive as that per se, and a lot of times they'll fly out and go right back into their other home if you've moved or transported them. So, you want to be careful, but they're going to know where their home is and they'll go to it. And if it's not their home, they'll make do and be happy with what they got.
Yeah.
That's also why you get disease transfer and mite transfer. You can't expect to have a mite-free hive. And the reason you're gonna get mites is because your bees are gonna go into somebody else's hive and they're not gonna get killed. And somebody else's bees are gonna come into your hive and they're not gonna get killed. They're not as territorial as we wanna make them out to be.
They are, he's correct. Especially if that bee is coming in with a full grocery sack on its legs and its belly. If I walk into your house with a crap load of groceries, do you think you're gonna turn me away?
We're gonna say, set that right over here.
He's got beer, he's got steak, he's got this, he's got that. Get that guy in here.
And if,
However, if I show up with absolutely nothing,
And it does.
chances are good that I'm gonna be escorted to the door. But in that, I mean, this is something that's maybe a little bit more advanced for people, but know that there are some of us out here that are doing this. So if by chance you have a problem in the first several months of having your queen dead, your roller, whatever, there's going to be the opportunity for you to possibly get the resources to build a new queen for yourself. Okay? Whether it be a full frame end to end, or whether it be a mini frame like this where it then gets strapped to one of these and introduced, and now all of a sudden you make your own queen. Just understand, some of you will lose your queen this year. You'll go queenless and you'll be like, well, son of a bitch, now what do I do? We'll cover that, I'm quite sure, later, but there's going to be those options where you could just transfer one frame and some bees, as long as the queen's not on here, from one frame to another. That's one of the reasons why it's a good idea to start off with two colonies, not just one, so that you can actually take from your own resources a frame from the hive that is strong, transfer it into the frame or into the hive that is struggling. And vice versa, that take one frame and put it back over here. Make sure your queen doesn't get transferred to that struggling hive. So you may need some help if you can't find your queen.
We just went way deep there.
I did.
We did, and you just scared another 90% of people.
I mean, the class was like, what frame do we take?
Hey, you know, one with eggs. One with eggs.
I have one other thing to say. You might be feeding your queen, you might be doing everything right, but please make sure you have a water source. Because even though it's sugar water, they still need regular water. They don't like regular water. Make sure you're starting to make your own dirty water right now. I've had a bucket outside for a month right now, just letting it get dirty. They don't like clean water for some reason, but make sure you have plenty of water.
So that they're not over bothering your neighbor's hot tub or your neighbor's little
They love
kitty.
clean hot tubs.
They do, they like the chlorine, so you can take your finger in a chlorine bottle and just dip it in and then dip it in the bee water. But you don't want them in the kiddie pool, you want to be a good neighbor. It is also in the beekeeping bylaws with the state of Utah that you've got to have a water source within 50 feet of your hive. So, yeah, if you want to stay
And I've
good.
actually put bleach in water, just
Yeah.
so that they get that chlorine
They're
smell.
very, again, what Mike was saying about
Pheromonic.
pheromonic, that they go with smells, especially when you have a new package. You want a water source that is not right next to your hive, but within a reasonable distance. But you want something they will smell, either chlorine, or if you've got some lemongrass or something that they will go seeking that water close. And once they have that habit of going to your water source, they will keep going back to your water source and they will stay out of your neighbor's hot tub.
Two easy water sources. We've got some that run just a bird feeder, and they put marbles in it so the bees have somewhere to land and they fill it up. I'm lazy, so I went and just bought a chicken water feeder that holds like 5 gallon or 4 whatever, and then you just throw cork bottles, tops in there, and hang it next to your hive, and then you can feed them for a week or two without having to fill up your.
I just let a car wash move in next to me, they took care of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally, I've got a 5-gallon bucket, like it's been said, you know, and wine corks on top, and I put about 5 or 10 drops of lemongrass in it in the spring, and they find it. In the wintertime, I have a dog dish that's warmed with rocks on it. So towards the end of the fall, where it really starts getting cold, I'll put that out with lemongrass. They find that. They come to that during, and I keep that full all winter long. Come spring, I get the 5-gallon bucket out, And it's gross by the end of the year because it's totally just slimy green.
If we put lavender in the water, do they make lavender honey?
I don't think so. But for some reason, they like that lemongrass scent, you know, mama. And the chlorine, that's another thing, but then that kills kind of the algae that's starting to build up in there. That chlorine kind of
Do
kills that.
not
So,
do this.
yeah,
I won't claim you if you do a front boardman feeder.
How come?
It attracts ants, it attracts robbing, yeah.
I don't even open feed.
Yeah, don't open feed.
It's a bad idea.
The in-hive feeders, the only problem is you just gotta crack that baby open and you gotta put it in there, and it's also taking the place of 2 frames that those bees could be working on.
It just takes one.
And
Some of them.
Well,
It depends
you
on
guys
how
may
big.
like them, I like to feed on the top, but this was Bee-mageddon for me. I drowned more bees in that thing than any.
We come from a different angle. If you ever ship your bees out to California, they require an in-hive
Oh, they do?
feeder.
Yeah.
And so,
So you guys are forced to use it.
yeah, we don't have we don't have the option. There's another one that Curtis runs that we're gonna switch to that's a little bit different in-hive that actually has a better rate with the drowning and stuff. So we come from a different angle because we're forced to, so all of ours they have them now where it's just 1 frame rather than 2.
Buy the 1 gallon ones, not the 1.5 gallon, because the 1.5 gallon takes 2 frame spots, and the 1 gallon is tight, but it keeps you 9 frames.
And my perspective is, I guess, different, especially building a new hive, because all your resources is in the hive. So again, they're gonna eat through that or drink through that in 3 days, but they're not leaving the hive to go find. So again, it goes back to, you need to have feed somewhere in the hive. With us, it's just right there, pollen patty on top. That way they're not having to go out and forage to find stuff to build. So 100%, you've gotta make sure you've got some type of feeder in there where they have something to pull from.
A well-fed hive will accept a queen
A lot better.
100 times better than if you don't have feed there. So you
Here's
wanna
what
make
Mike was
sure that
showing
your bees
you.
are well-fed if you're introducing that queen and stuff, yeah.
Because I wouldn't have done, back up, if you can.
I can.
It's just the arrow, yeah. There we go.
Okay, so this I would not do.
There's too much open space.
Too much open space. Inner cover, then this set up, and then the box on top. That keeps the robbing down to a minimum or non-existent. They're really not gonna be coming up into the top to do anything but feed and go back down and put the resources back on the frames. If you leave this alone like this for, a month and a half,
You're gonna have a mess.
you could have a mess.
You will. Yep, I'm sorry.
So these, I don't know how well you can see, but these are the holes that we were talking about. Quart, mason jar, whatever, lid, and it's just turned upside down, inverted. I keep it away from my brood center. I keep it to a corner, one way or the other, because my brood's typically gonna be right dead center.
I don't want it dripping on it.
But that's me. Now Lee Knight, like it's been said, he does those.
He does these buckets, so he'll do.
He'll do the bucket like that, and he's got the hole centered right there, and he just puts the bucket right on top, and it works. Not gonna knock it. But I typically try to keep my feeder away from my brood cluster.
Don't open feed.
Yeah, we already
Can you
mentioned.
say what that is, Shelley?
This is open feeding.
So the chicken watering thing that he was talking about, it's water. I'm sure he's not putting sugar water in that. That's gonna draw every bee from 3 miles away.
And then while they're robbing that, they'll rob your hives and they'll rob
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And they can strip a hive
And they're-
so quickly, and they get in there and they'll kill your queen pretty
and they're-
quickly.
And they're mean too.
But I
Yeah.
put lavender in there, so that way we make lavender in so I'm
Yeah,
fine.
you're good.
Well, you know, the lavender is calming them down. It's keeping them calm.
So our bee group also makes essential oils, and we've got, and you can look on the side of it, but when I do my sugar water 1-to-1, it tells how much on the bottle, but I do put essential oils in. I think it helps keep the bees healthy. It's good for their gut, and anyway, so yeah.
If you're doing the essential oils that we do sell, emulsify it into the sugar water. Don't just pour it in there and expect it to be good, because it's just gonna float to the top. It's gotta be emulsified into that sugar water.
Yeah. Pollen patties, those of us that were at the meeting back in February, we had pollen patties that we were passing out to build up our overwintered brood. And I know it's getting time, Martin, I'm almost done. We're done.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you guys for.
Yes, thank
We have two extra things that happen to our persons back here. There's the frame.
you. And if you didn't get, some lip gloss,
Remember, you can still pay your dues, it's only $20.
and Chris, I have your boards up here.
Oh, one other thing, real quick. So about dues, more importantly about swarms. Okay, I got a call, I think it was on Friday, I got a call this past Friday. Hey, I've got this colony of bees in my barn and we're gonna tear it down and they're getting really wild. I'm like, what do you mean wild? They're like, they are flying all over the place. We've never seen them do this before. I am not so sure that they didn't actually swarm this past Saturday. So if you're not on the swarm list, if you're interested in being on the swarm list, dues need to be paid. Jen's back here. She takes care of all that. She's raising her hand. Go talk to her, and then you'll be on the list, and I can have a possibility of calling you.
I just want to ask, somebody was here last time that has a 4-year-old queen. Are they here, or does anybody know remember who that was? Was you?
Not me.
I didn't feel a thing.